Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another restful episode of true, scary stories to help you fall asleep. Today, we're going to be reading some true beach horror stories. I hope you enjoy them. I would also like to thank Phoenix, also known as Back to Ashes, for reading the first story in this video. If you haven't heard of him before, which I don't know how you haven't if you watch this channel, but if you're new here and you haven't heard of him before, make sure that you go into the link in the description down below and subscribe to his channel. It would really mean a lot to me, and I'm sure to him as well. So, without further ado, lay back, relax, and enjoy these true, scary stories.
I was heading to the washroom on the beach when I realized someone grabbing my, not once or twice, but 3 times. Every time I turned around, he was grinning at me. I used the crowd of people to lose him and finally made it to the washroom and closed the door. But I heard someone outside asking the guys in line, "Did you see my daughter go inside just now? She was wearing a yellow bikini." I was freaking out and ran to the second or third stall and hid inside right before he entered the washroom and locked the door. I left the stall door wide open but hid behind it, hanging from the stall divider. I heard him pass me and I just hung on with every fiber in my being, too afraid to even pray for help. I don't know if he looked for my feet or not, but I had them propped up for as long as I could manage, before someone started knocking on the entrance door, and he opened the door and left. The 2 women who came in and saw me come out of the stall seemed concerned for me, but I told them he was looking for his daughter. I stayed in there waiting for my friends to meet me outside. Most terrifying moment of my life.
This is a story that happened to me when I was a child. I thought I'd share it on here. I've never shared this with anyone really before, so here we go. This took place back around 2008 if my memory serves me well. Me and my family had just moved to Costa Rica, and we enjoyed spending most of our time at the beach. One beach in particular, which was near a lovely little river I like to swim in. It was on this same beach that 9-year-old me found a dead body floating in the ocean. To give a little context, I had been playing on the beach, which we thought was a relatively safe beach, so my parents were further up. How wrong we were about it being safe. I remember seeing something floating in the water, but I wasn't sure what it was, so I went to investigate and found a dead man just floating there. Part of his leg had been hacked off. It was obvious that he had not drowned. The man had clearly been murdered. Around this time, we had heard about a recent string of murders that had happened both in the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, where we were, and on the Pacific side. The murders had been happening every 6 months, rotating in between regions of the country, so there was reason to assume this murder had been done by the same person, since it seemed to fit the timeline. As far as I can remember, the details of the murder were never disclosed in any of the local newspapers, only that the man had been a tourist from England, so there was no way for anyone who had not seen the man on the beach to know the specifics of his murder. Eventually, the whole thing blew over, and we returned to that same beach. I can't quite remember a time frame, but it was definitely within a few months of me finding the dead man that this next part happened. One day, I was swimming in the river with my mother when a very strange man popped up out of the water, startling us. He had a spear gun in his hand and a snorkel mask on. Anyways, he began talking to my mom, and I think we both could tell that something was just off about the guy. I wasn't really paying much attention for most of their conversation, but I do remember him bringing up the recent murder on the beach, and he seemed to know a great lot of details about it, which, as I previously mentioned, were not available to the public. It almost seemed as if he was trying to confess that he was the one who murdered the man, but without directly saying so. He also talked about how he traveled in between the Caribbean and the Pacific side of Costa Rica, spending half a year in each spot. Eventually, they also got on the topic of what he did for a living, and he went into a great detail about how he made the masks for the movie Eyes Wide Shut, and that he would make those masks, and I presume other ones based on real-life human emotions, and that he specifically liked capturing the look of fear. We were totally taken aback by this guy and didn't really know what to do. Eventually, he just got back into the river and swam away, and thankfully we never saw him again. I do not know if this is related or not, but the weird string of murders suddenly stopped after that. Sorry for the long post. Also, I tried to find the article about the man who was murdered so I could link it, but I couldn't seem to find any info on it. Hello everyone. First of all, I'm not a native English speaker, so please be indulgent with me. I'll try my best to make as little mistakes as possible. Also, long-time lurker, first-time poster. Anyway, my story deals with a pretty common situation that happens a lot, but it still creeped me out. Every year for summer holiday, me and my family go to my grandparents' house in a region in France called Bretagne, and they have the luck to live on a cliff right next to the beach, which is pretty neat. And for you to understand the situation I was in, I'll do a quick description of the place and most importantly how to access the beach. If it's not clear enough, I'll try to get some pictures as soon as possible as I'm here again. When we get out of the house, we need to cross a little road and get to an entrance between bushes. Then it's a clear but narrow path that you can take just to enjoy the view of the sea. Or you can also go to a staircase built in the rock off the cliff. Then you'll just have to walk on medium-sized stones, and you've arrived at the beach. The place itself is pretty big, but there's only a few ways to access it. By the staircase I described, or by another one at the other end of it. Also, big thing to mention, as I grew older, I stopped building sandcastles and swimming with my family. I'm 18, and the older of the 3 siblings are way younger than me, so I was done playing child's games. And I had started to climb the cliffs for fun. Not the steep ones. It was more or so a semi-hiking of partially collapsing cliffs. This will be relevant later. Now, on to the story. Last year after having dinner, I headed out for a little walk on the beach. No one seemed determined to come with me, so I went alone. No big deal. I did it every evening. After going down the staircase, I walked a little bit and then sat down on a stone to smoke a joint and listen to some music. Not really smart, but hey, I'm a teen in a little village that I go to every summer, and as much as I love my family, it gets pretty boring from time to time. Anyway, I'm enjoying my time when I spot a big guy in the corner of my eye at maybe 40 meters of me. No big deal, it's a free access beach after all. But then he starts heading his way towards me. His head was shaved, and he had square-shaped glasses on, maybe around his mid-20s or early 30s. He was pretty tan, like he worked outside for a long time. The bald dude is getting closer, but again, I don't own the beach. As he's coming next to me, I hear over my music that he's trying to talk to me. I remove my headphones and he said something along the lines of, "Hey, you look familiar. Have we met before?" I answered with a calm but firm no, but he keeps insisting that he saw me at the beach today. And sure, I said maybe he did, but there are tons of people at the beach. I don't remember everyone I see. The way I'm responding clearly implies that I'm not interested in having a conversation with him, but he sits on a stone next to me and keeps talking mostly about himself, that he loves the beach, the weather is nice, that I'm nice with him. This is where it got creepy. He says that it's rare to find nice girls, and that he's happy that I'm not a B-word. He then asks about my name, where I live, and of course I didn't say a thing. He started to lean closer to me, which made me really uncomfortable, always with a huge grin on his face. That's when it hit me. Remember when I said that there were only a few entrances to the beach? That jerk was sitting right between me and the staircase. I was cornered. No one was there. We were completely alone. And even though I'm quite athletic, I'm 5.9 feet and weigh 90 pounds. This guy for me is twice my size, and he clearly wants to continue our discussion. As I'm not responding, he started to sound annoyed, clenching his fist. But still, with his stupid grin glued to his face, he asked me if I was really a good girl, and why won't I talk to him? I'm crapping myself at this point, when I look at my left and almost let out a sigh of relief. One of the cliffs that I'm used to climbing onto is right next to us, and even if I said that they are more like hiking than climbing, I could rush to the top in a matter of seconds as I'm used to doing it, run on the narrow path and get home safe. So I just got up and said, "I don't want to talk anymore. Good evening." He looked startled for a moment, looking back at the staircase for a second, which confirmed my suspicions. He thought he had blocked my only way of escaping, since the other stairs were way too far. To this day, it still scares me that this was his first reaction. At this point, I'm high, tired and terrified, but I start to walk confidently to the cliff at a high pace, and in the corner of my eye, I can see that he is standing now looking in my direction. As soon as I'm close enough, I literally start to jump from rock to rock as fast as I can, scratching myself in the process. When I arrive at the top, I look down, and he is looking at me, not smiling like before, but frowning and looking like he is on the verge of committing a crime. I then sprinted to my grandparents' house, which luckily is really close, and explained everything to my mother, and the next day I reported the guy to the police station, giving the best description that I could. Since it's a small village, they could apprehend him easily if he was a resident, but to be fair, French police suck, and nothing came of it. So yeah, sorry if it was long, but I wanted to give a detailed explanation of what happened. It was a little bit anticlimactic, but this guy actually had a plan in mind, and I'm glad that I did not stick around to discover what it was. And again, since I'm back at the place, I could take some pictures of it if you'd like. Just ask. So when I was a kid, maybe 6 or 7 in the mid-90s, we took a family trip to the beach in Florida. We were staying in a beach house a short walking distance from the beach. We went to the beach and I was supposed to stay inside of my mom, but I wandered way down, and before I knew it, I was lost. A lot of the houses looked the same, and I wasn't sure which one was ours. Plus, I couldn't see my mom anywhere. It started to rain. I came to a path that I was pretty sure led back to our house. Only, it didn't lead to a house at all, but instead to a parking lot. There was a big dirty van parked there. It was the only vehicle around. I was about to turn back when I noticed an overweight woman with brown hair, a hot pink tank top, and those big clunky thick glasses that were popular in the 80s, waving and smiling at me from the passenger seat of a van. She said something like, "Oh my, it's raining. Where's your mom? Let us take you to her. It's dangerous to be out here in the rain. You could get struck by lightning." She was very friendly, almost overly so. In the driver's seat was a very overweight man without a shirt on, a hairy gray chest, and some clunky-looking gold chain. He was wearing yellow-tinted Elvis shades and staring at me intently. He was also smoking a cigarette, which I knew was bad. The woman stepped out of the van and kneeled down to me. She asked how old I was. When I told her, she gleefully remarked, "Oh my, we have 2 boys at our house your age. You should come over and spend the night. We've got movies, Nintendo, and in the morning we've got all types of cereal." I had been taught all about stranger danger, but at this point in my life, no adult had ever given me any reason not to trust them. The lady continued talking about stuff like how the boys have go-karts and they like to drink chocolate milk. She made it seem very enticing for a 7-year-old kid, and at this point, I trusted her. I mostly liked the idea of getting to play with some kids my age. Then I remembered that I needed to ask my mom first. I told her this. She told me that was no problem, that they lived just up the road, and my mom shouldn't mind. It started raining harder, and she opened the sliding door of the van and said something like, "Now let's get you out of this rain and go find your mommy." I knew logically that I shouldn't do this, but the lady seemed really nice, and I was desperately wanting to get out of the rain. As I walked towards the open door of the van, I noticed an awful stench that almost made me gag. This set off alarm bells in my head that something wasn't right. There were cigarette butts all over the floor. I looked up at the fat man who was not only staring at me with this menacing glare, but he had this real creepy toothy smile, and his teeth were stained a dark yellow. I could pick up on a very messed up vibe from him. I knew now that I should run, but the woman was ushering me to hurry up and get in. Her demeanor had changed. She was being demanding and trying to literally push me into the van. She sounded angry and said, "Get in already," in a tone that was the complete opposite of how she had sounded before. I jumped to the side and started running as fast as I could. The woman managed to grab my arm or wrist, but somehow I was able to quickly break free and run back to the beach. I think she tried to chase me, but like I said, she was very overweight. I made it back to my mom, who was freaking out. I tried explaining what had happened to me, but I didn't think that at 7 years old I was able to convey the gravity of what had happened to me, and I didn't fully understand it myself. This happened years ago, when I was maybe 17. I'm 23 now. My family was on vacation. We were staying at a resort in South Carolina on the beach. The resort had 2 buildings, one directly by the beach and one across the street. We were staying in the building across the street. My cousin, my sister, and myself decided to go and sit on the beach one night. It was probably about 9 p.m. There were usually a few people out walking or playing around. On this night, there wasn't anyone out there except a few couples walking by randomly. We sat down some towels and watched the water from a good distance. We were chatting and telling stories. We noticed a man walking around us, going to the water, back to the walkway leading up to the resorts, back and forth. He got closer and closer to us until he was walking so close that he stepped on the edge of our towels. He was a big man with shaggy blonde hair. My sister suggested we go down to the water. He followed us. At this point, we knew he was following us, so we decided to leave. We started up the wooden walkway back to our building. Like I said, our building was across the street. To get to it, you had to pass through a little alleyway. The alley was well lit, and the street was relatively busy, but there was a parking garage adjacent to the alleyway. My head immediately told me not to walk past that parking garage. We were facing the alleyway, about to walk through. This guy is right behind us. I loudly said, "Hey, wait, let me beat off my sandals." We stopped and took our shoes off and beat the sand out of them. The man passed us reluctantly, so close that he was almost touching us. I saw his eyes for the first time. He was definitely on something. His pupils were messed up. His eyes were wide as saucers. He passed by us slowly and went where? Directly into the parking garage. I knew he was waiting for us. I said, "Run." We ran back over the wooden walkway and onto the beach, through the sand to the next walkway, which led up to another building's pool area. He was behind us again, chasing us, running full force. We got into the pool area and the man stopped. There was a woman cleaning, and we told her what happened. She got hotel security, and a police officer asked us some questions and walked us back to our building. I was scared by this experience for a while, and I will not go to the beach at night ever again. At least, not without my very large and tough fiance by my side. Ever. I was a single mother of 2 young boys. We didn't have a lot of money, so we would often drive down to a small state park along the Oregon Coast Highway. We would park the car and walk a trail through the woods to the beach. We usually had the whole beach and trail to ourselves, with the exception of the occasional surfer. This was almost the case the last time we were there. It was a Wednesday. We had a good time talking about the trees, berries, and even posing for a few pictures. We rolled up our pant legs and explored the tide pools. It was fun, but we were tired and ready to go home. On the way back, a man came running towards us from the other trail. When he stopped, his face was about a foot away from mine. I hadn't seen him as he first approached, therefore didn't have time to realize that I should be scared. I smiled at him and said, "Excuse me." As I started walking, it dawned on me. He should have seen us long before he came up on us. He wasn't dressed for a jog either. I started to think of what I would do if he came after us. There was no way to outrun him with my 2 little ones. My kids were talking to me, but I was so scared I couldn't think to answer. So I decided to sing a little song from their Yoshi video game. Be careful, be careful. Over and over, singing faster and faster, trying to make them walk faster. Finally, we returned to the car. I lifted them into the passenger seat through the driver's side. We didn't even need to have seatbelts or a change of clothes. We just had to leave, now. The following Wednesday, I received a phone call from my mom. 2 workers had been shot in the head at that park. One lived. The other I knew had not. It turns out that the man had been released from prison 2 weeks before. He had stole their pickup. When he was caught, he claimed that he didn't shoot them. He described another vehicle that he claimed was there, and it was the perfect description of my car. So I had just graduated from high school in June, and about 2 weeks later, some friends and I decided to go camp out on the beach and have a bonfire and whatnot. There was a ton of other people there too, so we weren't too worried about something happening. A lot of them were still awake at their campsites well into the night, and at this age, no bonfire is complete without lots and lots of pot. So there's 4 of us and we're hotboxing the tent. We're really turned up, and we're just munching away on whatever we had while talking and listening to music outside by the fire. 1 a.m. rolls around and my mom calls me because she suddenly changed her mind and wanted me home. But I was so high that I wasn't capable of leaving just yet. So I waited an hour and we hop into my buddy's truck and tear up the beach on the 10-minute drive back to the parking lot where I had left my car. We get there. I give everyone a hug goodbye, and they tell me to drive safe or just bite the bullet and stay with them so I'm safe. I tell them that I'll just nap in my car for a bit so I can come down before driving. They leave, and I'm sitting in my car for about 15 minutes, but I just started getting creeped out. There was no one out in the entire city but me, and it was just so dark and eerie. It was unsettling to say the least, so I thought, screw this, I'm getting out of here, at least to a well-lit place. I turned on my car and backed out, then started to leave the lot when I noticed a pair of headlights come on the other end of the lot. Crap, it must be the popo. Nope. I come to a stoplight and look in my mirror. It was a black sedan. Okay, no big deal. Maybe they just happened to leave the same time I did. They took the same turns I was taking. I almost went through the back roads back to my town, but decided the freeway would be safer. As soon as I was on the on-ramp, I stopped the gas pedal and was pushing 95. They kept up. I tried switching lanes and falling back so I was behind them, but they did the same, so I just sped up again. They followed me for the 20-minute drive back to my hometown. I made a bunch of turns and was finally able to lose them by quickly turning in a narrow road, hiding my car behind some trees and shutting it off. I rolled down the window just a bit and watched as they stopped in the street I turned from, and got out of the car and looked around cluelessly. It was 2 guys that had to be in their 40s. My heart was racing so badly, and I was praying that they wouldn't spot me. They got back in and drove off. I waited 10 minutes before getting back on the road. I made it home safe, and locked the door and window when I got inside. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night, and I stared out my window all night in case they found me. First time poster, long time lurker here. This memory was brought up at Sunday lunch last Sunday, so I decided to post it here. Okay, a bit of a backstory here. I'm 19 now, but I was around 4 or 5 at the time. My parents used to be nudists when I was small and would encourage me and my brother, 7 or 8 at the time, to accept our bodies, not to be afraid to show the skin that we were born in. Other child teaching stuff like that. They informed me that a lot of their reason for being nudists was because of a very manipulative and persuasive friend they used to have, who was into the practice. They are now extremely embarrassed about their period as nudists, and try to hide the matter from a lot of friends and family. Well, anyway, my dad and mom both worked a pretty stable job in an online accounting firm back then, so we went on holidays quite often. I used to love going to Spain the most, so we chose to go to Spain that summer. On our 10-day trip there, before we headed off to the US for a weekend, we enjoyed going to the beach almost every day. Of course, at the time, my parents loved nudist beaches, not only for people like them, but also to get a perfect lineless tan. So we were on the beach, and my dad and brother were splashing around on the shore while my mother and I were on some sun chairs, her sleeping and me burying my legs in some sand. I didn't really have anything growing on me back then, so nobody paid much attention to me. They did like to look at my mother occasionally though, and when I told her we moved our chairs back to a more secluded part of the beach, where there were less people, she fell back asleep, and next to us were a couple, with 2 kids playing behind their chairs, which I thought were their kids. The woman looked at me as I reburied my little legs in the sand and pointed at me, whispering something to the man. She stood up and hung a towel from the sun umbrella above them. He reached into a duffel bag next to him and got out some sunscreen and started to rub it on a sausage-like thing between his legs vigorously. I now know what that was. He was staring intently at me, and even 14 years later I remember that odd look of determination but pleasure on his face. He passed the sunscreen to his girlfriend/wife, and she slipped some in between her legs as well. Even at that age, and with my parents being nudists, I felt an instinct that it was not right for them to be staring at me and touching themselves like that. I tried to ignore them and look away, but when I looked back they were still staring at me. The woman's look was a little softer than the man's, but still really thoroughly creeped me out. What happened next is one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me, and that is saying a lot compared to other things that have happened to me. The next minute, the woman stopped touching herself and got up. She wiped her hands and area and reached for me, grabbing my arms and shushing me, trying to pull me out of the sand that I was buried in. The sand was giving away quickly, and I screamed for my mother. She says I kept going, "Mommy, help. Mommy, help." But I don't remember. It was all a blur to me as my mom got up and yelled, "¿Qué está haciendo?" "What are you doing?" at the woman. My mom said the woman quickly let go of me, and not in Spanish, but in a northern English accent, which she must have guessed because the English tinge in my mother's Spanish, explained to her that I had buried myself deep in the sand up to my nose, and she thought that I was going to slip under. So she had simply pulled me out of concern. The sand underneath me was wet, and from my hips upwards I had not a spot of sand stuck to me whatsoever, so my mom knew she was lying. "Your daughter is very pretty and we meant no harm," the man said, unaware that he was still rubbing his nether regions. At that point, my mother loses it. "What did you just say? And what are you doing to yourself, you disgusting old twit?" The man realized and removed his hand from his inner thigh. "Just sun cream. Keep the old sun from burning me. Just rubbing it in. Do you like hip-hop?" is what I said. My mother reminded him his wife had draped a towel that was blocking all sun, and he blushed profusely. She spat in the young woman's face, got my hand, and dragged me away quickly. We got to my brother and dad, and she told my dad what had happened. He stormed over to the lifeguard and explained to him very shortly the situation. Then him and the lifeguard went to where our stuff was. The couple had taken off, and all that was left were their seats and the two kids. Mom scoured through her beach bag for her cell to call the local police station, but her phone was missing. So was my dad's wallet. The lifeguard radioed into the beach kiosk to call the police and to play on the speakers placed on the bars around that two kids were unaccompanied and their parents need to collect them. In about a minute or so, a woman came running, tears in her eyes, and scooped up the two kids. They must have been around 2 years old, and she held them, crying her eyes out. She thanked the lifeguard and my parents and told us that her husband had fallen asleep, and we told her the couple must have taken them and moved them to their spot. She had her cell in hand and said she was just about to call the police. My mom told her to, and the lifeguard offered to drive us all to the station, including the woman and her husband, as his shift was about to end. We all changed and drove down. In the end, my parents and the nice couple gave their statements. 2 days later, that couple was caught in a hotel, offering kids around a pool sprites that had apparently been drugged. They admitted to being child fetishists, a more complicated word for nasty P words, and were arrested for many charges like child abduction. They were found with a kid in their hotel room, attempting to kidnap, child molestation, trespassing, amongst others. My dad says they were deported back to somewhere near Bradford, but ran away before court was due. I don't know if they're still out there, but creepy, vile couple who hurt kids and upset my childhood, let's never, ever meet again. I worked with my girlfriend at a busy restaurant. We worked all the time and it was a stressful job. We took off a few days and decided to fly somewhere to get away from work, people, and the town in general. I found decent deals and flights to Ocean City, Maryland for 2 nights. She had never been on a plane. We loved the beach, and I could hit up all the local crab cake spots. It was perfect. We flew into Baltimore and rented a car to drive to OC. Nothing memorable happened the first day. We laid on the beach, hit up all the local shops, and had forgettable food. The second full day we woke up and went to the most recommended stop for crab cakes. And on the way back we stopped and got crab cakes to go from 2 other recommended places for later. We stopped by the hotel to drop the food off and went to the hotel bar for a few drinks. Note, my girlfriend at the time was a smoker and I hated it. She would also attract attention from guys, which I would deal with but wasn't thrilled about. We go to the rooftop bar at the hotel, and the bar itself is a 4-sided island in the middle of the patio. It's probably 2 p.m. and a clear sunny day. We pull up chairs, and there's only a few women on the left side of the bar, and a guy bartender behind it. We got obligatory house margaritas. After her first drink, my girlfriend felt like she wanted a smoke, but the girls and the bartender didn't have one to bum her. We got refills and schmoozed with the bartender about the area and things to do, but mainly kept to ourselves. The bartender seemed as if he was being fake. Something was off and I couldn't put my finger on it. A feeling of, I really don't want to run into the restroom and leave her there at the bar, because I don't trust something. More than a few times he asked us if we were staying at that hotel. I think I said no. The girlfriend said yes. She asked us what room at one point. My girlfriend went to use the restroom. A minute later I heard guys' voices. I didn't realize there was a group of 3 to 4 guys that sat at a table directly behind us. They were either playing cards or just smoking, but they made some comment to her when she walked back. Great. We finished our drinks and were Googling tropical drinks for her and area hotspots to check out. The guys came up on either side of us and talked to the bartender and got beers. You could tell they were either friends or regulars. I honestly couldn't tell you if they were there when we came to the bar or if they came after, but they had a sleazy vibe. Me and my girlfriend ended up talking to the only other couple at the bar that had come and sat down. It was nice to be away and just relax. We always liked making new friends. I didn't realize it, but one of the guys came up and either brushed against my girl or made a comment, and it rubbed me the wrong way. So, in her infinite wisdom, she wanted to be bothersome to them and got up and asked to bum a smoke. I didn't realize it until I turned around and there she was, talking to the guy with his shirt unbuttoned and gold chains hanging on his chest hair forest. I didn't want her associating with them, but if one gave her a smoke, I would get the guy a beer if it meant we didn't have to leave the bar to hit a store for smokes. She came back without a cigarette, mad. Apparently, the guys kept asking what's in it for us, and said, "Your boyfriend wants to fight us. Why would we give you anything?" I didn't want to fight them. I was on vacation and I wasn't paying attention to them. But I didn't like the implication of the other comment, at all. Because we had a lackluster first day, I wanted to pack in fun things this day. So this drink was my last one. I asked for the tab, and the guy of the couple we met gave us his business card. He said we should meet him and his girlfriend at Secrets at 8 p.m. The guys behind us kind of swarmed on all sides of us and slammed down a pack of cigarettes. 2 smokes inside left, in between both me and the girlfriend. They said something like "here" when they ordered another round. We found it odd, but I thanked them and offered a shot. I don't even think they replied. One asked if we were vacationing, then asked if we were staying at this hotel, then took the round of beers back to the table. I had a weird feeling, as if they were locals and didn't like us because we were visitors. Turning back to the bar, my drink was now completely full. Stupid me didn't even question it. I didn't want a refill, but figured the bartender topped me off. I took a sip and the drink was strong. I just closed out, so maybe it was a thank you for the tip. It was disgustingly strong, like rubbing alcohol, maybe even turpentine. I told my girl to try it. Boozy Susie over here takes a huge pull from my drink and nearly spit it back out. It was gross. She made a face and said that it shouldn't taste like that. I couldn't even ask the bartender about it because he was gone. I don't know when he disappeared, but he was nowhere to be found. I can't remember if I fully finished the nasty thing or not. My girl said something along the lines of, "The guys are staring, let's go." I was originally worried that she was going to chat them up and thank them before we left, but she said she felt weird. The whole vibe changed. She wanted out. I remember spending a minute or two saying bye to the couple that we were going to meet later, and heading towards the doors into the hotel. The guys weren't at their table. Patio door, elevator, hotel room door, bed. My eyes open and I turn my head right. The alarm clock reads 3 a.m. I am face down in bed, on top of the covers. I push myself up, slide back off the bed and stand up. The sliding glass doors are wide open, as are the screen doors to the balcony. There's a breeze. I think, did my girlfriend jump off the balcony? And in that millisecond I hear crying behind me. My girlfriend is sitting Indian style on the floor, with a clamshell of what was $40 worth of crab cakes in her lap, crying. She said she couldn't wake me up. She asked me if I remembered what happened. She said she had been sick and throwing up for 4 hours nonstop. What the heck happened? I bent over to sit down with her and got hit with a wave of sickness. I ran and was in that bathroom for hours puking. By the time I came out, she was asleep/passed out again. This had to be a bad dream. I remember thinking that maybe we went to the club and got wasted and I blacked out. I went back to bed. We both woke up at 7 a.m. to our alarms. We had to take the rental to Baltimore and catch a flight back. We both had to be at work at 2 today. I was shaking. She looked like heck. We both felt like death. She was shook. She said the walk back to the hotel room was scary, and she didn't remember anything after. Wait, what? According to her, when we walked into the hotel room from the bar patio, one of the guys was on a chair near the elevators. He said something to us, but the doors closed quickly. She said when we got to our floor, two of the guys were at the end of the hall heading towards us. She said that he got in the room, and they stood outside the door, and she thinks they knocked. Apparently, I laid on the bed and immediately was lights out. She couldn't wake me, and passed out herself until she woke up to violently vomit for hours. My body was shot. I was shaking, and now I'm processing that these scumbags maybe followed us to our room. Part of me thought she was exaggerating, but you know how you have a weird slow motion flashback? Well, as I was graying out on the way to the hotel room, I remember one of the guys being by the elevator. Also, as she was brushing her teeth, her mouth was blue. I went to the mirror. So was mine. Neon blue. Nothing we had that day was blue. I had light green margaritas and vodka root beers. This was proof that something fishy had to have happened. We didn't know what to do. We had to get back. We couldn't stick around. We got to the car. I barely felt okay to drive, but I wanted to be home. We felt dirty. We were confused, and we wanted out of Maryland and swore we were never coming back. We missed our flight, explained the situation to the desk, and somehow got put on another flight back home. We sat in the airport for hours, dying. The flight was painful too. We made it to work a few hours late that day. Nobody believed our story and thought we made it up to justify being late, and we kind of just never brought it up again. I Googled to see if similar situations happened and found nothing. We Googled blue tongue and saw that it's a side effect of a drug. I'll be honest, I felt lucky we made it out of Ocean City. I don't know if we were a target of a room invasion or robbery, or if they wanted to attack or kidnap my girl. It could have turned out ugly in a lot of different ways. What if my girlfriend didn't take a huge swig? What if I drank the whole thing by myself? How close did I come to an OD or death depending on the drug and its interactions with alcohol? I swear the bartender was in on it. I did call the hotel and I asked if there was any issues with people being drugged or room robberies, and they said that they had 0 incidents, and I think I let it go. I emailed the hotel from a throwaway email that I created and told them to watch the hotel roof bar and bartender, and never got a reply. I realize I wrote a ton, but that's my story, and I think about it anytime someone brings up Ocean City.
This might be a little long, but it still gives me nightmares. I'm a 21-year-old female. I drive from Miami to Daytona Beach almost every other week. I make sure to fuel up before I start off, but this one unfortunate day I didn't. I left Daytona around 12 a.m., driving back to Miami. I drive a black Mustang, 40th anniversary. I was literally flooring it back home through I-95. The entire route was empty, other than a few trucks and small cars here and there. I was jamming to some good music, and not paying much attention to what was going on with my fuel tank. Around 2:30 to 2:45 a.m., the low fuel warning came up. I saw it, and started looking for the nearest exit, which just happened to be Boynton Beach. I've never been there, and had no idea about how the area was. I took the exit, and saw that there's a Circle K right off the exit. I was a little relieved because now, at least I wouldn't run out of fuel in the middle of nowhere. Now with barely any fuel left in my car, I pull up to the gas station. It's totally empty. I cannot even see a single car inside, or even outside on the road. There were no people, other than one tall man in a red-collared jacket walking around near the side of the gas station, where all the parkings are. But he was not very close to the pump I was at. I was a little scared, but I usually try to shake my fear off by telling myself that it's nothing. This man at this point is looking at the ground, but kind of walking in the general direction of my car. I'm still inside the car contemplating whether I should get out or stay in. Usually I would have just gotten out and fueled, not being scared. But that day something in my gut told me to lock the door, and wait inside until he either goes away or walks past my car. At this point, this guy is just a few feet away from my car, still not looking at me. I'm trying to tell myself, it's okay. He doesn't even care that I'm here. I should get out. But then my worst fear comes to life. This man looks straight at me and dashes towards the driver's side door and tries to open it. At this point, it's around 3 a.m. with no other people in the general vicinity. I literally froze for a second and thought that I was going to die. He pulled on the door handle several times trying to get it open, but then I somehow got my senses back, turned the car on and floored it. He didn't let go of the door handle until I started the car and hit the gas pedal. I'm so thankful that despite the low fuel, my car still started up and drove off. I had nothing on me to defend myself. Nothing at all other than a plastic fork that I got from Panda Express earlier that day. I still can't get over the whole experience. It still scares the living crap out of me. Creepy man from the gas station, let's never meet again. This is my first post on this subreddit, but I've frequented it for a while. This is really the only experience I've had that would fit this sub, and it felt so surreal while it was happening. So, I'm a 21-year-old male, and this experience happened last summer, while I was on vacation at Myrtle Beach with my family. We were staying in a resort right on the beach, and we're on the 13th or 14th floor in a sort of timeshare. One night, I was feeling restless and having a hard time falling asleep. And at around 3 a.m., I decided to go out on the balcony to get some air. I stepped out and was stunned as there was a full moon, and the moonlight on the water was really beautiful. The beach was completely empty as far as I could see, and I had never seen it like that before. I decided since I wasn't able to sleep, I might as well head down, take a stroll, and listen to some music to relax. Hopefully when I returned, I'd be able to get some sleep. It was really unsafe and dumb of me, but since it was 3 a.m. and the rest of my family was asleep, I decided to just head down without letting anyone know I was going, as I thought I'd just go and chill there for about 10 to 15 minutes and then come right back up. So, at the base of the timeshare we were at, there was an area with a pool, an outdoor bar, and then 2 boardwalks separated by about 100 feet, which both led to the beach. On the sides of the boardwalks, there were swaths of tall grass separating the ocean and the resort. When I got down to the base, the entire area was completely deserted, and I started walking down the boardwalk on the right towards the beach. As I'm walking down, I suddenly see someone approaching me from the beach, which was strange because I had a pretty clear view of this same area from the balcony just before, and had literally seen no one. I start to get a bit nervous as I see this figure approach. And as I get closer, I see it's a man, maybe in his late 30s, who has a backpack on and is wearing glasses with large, square lenses. As he gets closer, I get a clear look at him, as the boardwalk is sort of illuminated by lights from the outdoor bar. He looks very on edge and alert, almost like he's trying to find someone who is trying to meet him in this area, and his clothes are somewhat tattered. We made eye contact and I sort of nod at him and pass. At this point I'm creeped out, because honest to God, he had sort of a Jeffrey Dahmer look. Maybe it was the glasses, and he just didn't seem like he actually belonged to the timeshare. I shake it off and keep walking down to the beach and put my headphones in. As I get down to the beach, I turn right and start walking parallel to the water, and I'm just taking in the scenery. I'm barefoot, and decide that it would be nice to walk just along the shoreline. So I move closer to the water and continue walking. I'm walking for no longer than a minute before I get a really, really strange feeling that something is wrong. I take off my headphones and turn around, and I see a dark figure that is trailing me just up shore. He is situated in between me and the timeshare. I immediately can tell from the figure's height, body type, and demeanor that it is the same man that I passed on the boardwalk. At this point, I'm starting to panic, as every story from Let's Not Meet is rushing to my head. At the same time, I'm trying to rationalize as it feels too surreal that I may actually be in a dangerous situation. So I remind myself that it could just be a coincidence, and the man decided he also wanted to take a walk on the beach, and just happened to be headed in the same direction as me. So I take some breaths and turn my head back to the ocean and continue walking in the same direction. After a couple of seconds, I turn my head back again and see that now he is much closer to me and is not walking parallel to me, but is definitely actually walking towards me. I pick up my walking speed now and turn my head back around and see he is matching my faster pace and is still walking towards me and the water. Still, for some reason I think, okay, maybe he just also wants to walk by the water. There's no way I'm actually being followed by a creepy man on a deserted beach. So at this point, to truly test it, I do a 180 and completely change directions. And as I turn my head, I see him completely change directions with me and continue closing in distance, and he is power walking now. It suddenly hits me that I'm in a really bad situation, and I take off in a run along the water, and he starts running as well, but stays up shore of me so that if I try to run upwards the boardwalk, he will intercept me. I'm freaking out now, and just keep running with no plan, but figure that since I'm 20 and sort of fit, I should probably be able to keep running along the water and outrun him, and then find some other exit off the beach and either call my family or head back to the timeshare on the road. So I keep running, but he's keeping up with me, and this goes on for what feels like 10 to 15 minutes. The scariest part of all of this, which I wouldn't have thought of, is it is completely dead silent. All I hear is my breath and feet on the sand, and when I turn, I only see a shadowy figure up shore keeping pace with me. Suddenly, up ahead in the sand, I see a small blue light and what looks like 4 people on the beach with a blanket. They are a bit upshore. I turn and look at the figure and bet even though they are upshore, I can beat him to these people. So I start sprinting towards them with hopes of quickly telling them what's going on so we can all confront him. I really use up my energy sprinting towards them, and as I approach, my heart drops. What I see is 4 guys on a blanket, with 3 or 4 handles of hard liquor surrounding them. 3 of the handles are empty, and the 4th is about half empty. 3 of the guys are just completely passed out on the blankets, and the last is half sat up, obviously beyond crap-faced, with a sort of party hat on that has blue lights on it, and he's talking to himself. His eyes are half closed, and he doesn't even register me approaching him, even though now I'm no more than 5 feet away. I turn and see the figure has slowed down and is observing me, and then I see that he makes sense of the group's state and suddenly starts sprinting at me. As he gets closer, the half-passed out guy's blue light illuminates him, and I can clearly see it's the same guy as before. I make eye contact with him, and I can see that he's wide-eyed and looks almost manic, and is barreling at me full sprint. At this point, I decide I have to do something decisive. It seemed like I had underestimated his fitness, and since I had just sprinted towards this group and exhausted myself, I was afraid that he might actually be able to catch up to me if we just continued running along the beach indefinitely, and then who knows what. So instead of turning around and running, I suddenly sprint towards him and to the right, which I don't think he was expecting at all. I catch him off balance and run past him, and I literally am full sprinting back to the timeshare without even looking back. Literally, all the hairs on my neck were standing, and it felt like a dream where you're barely evading someone but he's right about to catch you. The adrenaline was crazy, and I keep running and start to see the timeshare. I finally turn around to see how close he is, and I see him in the distance maybe 400 to 500 feet away. He's lost a lot of distance on me. I don't waste any time and sprint up the boardwalk and towards the base of the timeshare. I jam the elevator buttons and leap in, and start mashing the closed door button as I'm gasping for air. The door closes and I hit the button for my floor. And when the elevator reaches, I literally sprint back to my room, open the door, enter, and then slam the door and double lock it. I'm breathing heavy, and I drop to the floor and just sit there for a minute, not believing what just happened. I crouch and crawl over to my room, as I was literally afraid that he might be able to see me through the window on our balcony, and I enter my room. Let's just say, I definitely wasn't able to sleep after that. Guy who chased me on the beach, let's not meet again. This all happened in July of 2004. I was 12 at the time, and my parents brought me to Kona, Hawaii, the Big Island. Needless to say, that was an amazing time, and is just about the last place you'd expect something creepy to happen. That is, until the second to last night there. My parents and I were tossing around a ball in the ocean when I overthrow my dad and a kid my age catches it. We invite him to join in. And after a while, my parents get tired and go back on the beach, while me and him stay in playing. A woman that appears to be his mother is walking around taking pictures of us over and over. And when my mom tries to start a conversation with her, the woman completely ignores her. Turns out, Jason lives in Los Angeles and is headed back tomorrow just as we are. We were connected through LAX, and thank God we didn't share a flight. Once it gets dark, we go back on the beach and don't see Jason's mother anywhere. He did confirm it was her. After searching all over the beach, we head back to the hotel. To clarify, the hotel is directly behind the beach with a pool and a bar in between. You can vaguely see the beach through the palm trees depending on the floor, but certainly not your child. We take Jason up to his room to see if his mother is there, and he says hello to a man on the way up as if he knows him. My mom asks if the man is his dad, and he says no, as his father ran off 5 months after he was born. We knock on the hotel door several times, and we can hear the TV on, but no one answers. We're all hungry, so we go down to the lobby to use the phone. He calls up to his room and leaves a message that we're going down to the downstairs restaurant to eat. So we have buffalo wings and soda, and we talk about SpongeBob, Ed, Edd and Eddy, etc. He seemed like any other kid. It was a bit strange though. When we were in the ocean and lost one of our floats, he went swimming after it way too far, and my dad called him to come back. Otherwise, who knows how far he'd have chased it, and possibly drowned. Now it's been at least 3 hours since we saw any sign of his mother, until we head back up to the lobby. She's there by the concierge, screaming at us that she called the police. Knowing how crazy this was, my dad called them as well. They arrive rather quickly, and we tell our story. All the while, Jason's mother is shouting, "You're just trash," at us repeatedly. I don't recall Jason saying much of anything. Eventually, the situation dies down, and we go back to our rooms, placing a desk in front of the door. Fortunately, we don't run into them on the way back. Okay, so this happened in Maine when I was about 3 years old, almost 4. I was at the beach with my mom. We went as a group with some other stay-at-home moms and their kids. It was a fairly hot and crowded day there, and I found myself playing with the other kids at the edge of the water. For some reason, I strayed away a bit, and that's when a middle-aged woman started talking to me. I remember her very clearly. She looked like a mother would, with a one-piece black bathing suit, cargo shorts, sunglasses, and her hair pulled up in a bun. She asked me what games I liked to play, and what my favorite candy was. As soon as I told her, I believe I said Tootsie Pops. She told me she had some in her car, and persuaded me to come with her. Yes, I know. I was a bit naive as a child. She was cheerful and enthusiastic, taking my hand and leading me away through the crowded beach. I skipped alongside her and had no fear whatsoever. Then, thank my lucky stars, my mom spotted me from a distance and started screaming my name at the top of her lungs, and jumping up and down while waving her arms. The woman immediately let go of my hand and darted away. I just stood there, terribly confused, until my mom got to me. I get chills thinking about it now. She seemed so nice at the time, though I admit I was way too trusting. It stinks of an attempted kidnapping now. If my mom hadn't have spotted me, who knows where I would be, or if I would even be alive. I seem to be a magnet for creeps and weirdos, and since I got such a positive response on my last experience, I figured I would share a few more with you all. I'll be writing in order of let's not meetness, so scroll to the end if you only want the scariest. Background. These all took place outside of my home at the time, which was on the literal last block of a major city, right across the street from the beach. The building was framed on 4 sides by the beach, the woods, a construction site, and a few other sleepy houses, as well as a muni line. Think the subway, but above ground. It's the very last stop on the muni, so unless you catch it at the right time of day or at the height of tourist season, the area is basically empty on the sidewalks. The house itself has an initial patio door, which doesn't always fully close if you don't slam it. And then an entry area, with a staircase and leading up to a second locked door that leads to the apartment. Experience number 1. I get home from work one day around 9 p.m. and immediately get into a small spat with my roommates. After about 30 minutes, I decide to leave the house to cool off. I had planned on sitting on the porch outside, but as I looked across the street at the ocean, I decided it would be more peaceful there. I had never been to the beach at night, for safety reasons, but as I looked at the well-lit parking lot and no one in sight, I decided it would be alright. In the 1-block span from my beach to my home, there was a little wooded path that started on my street and dumped you out on the crosswalk for the beach. It also intersected with another pathway that took you down the coast. I sat for a bit. Everything was fine, and after a while I started the roughly 1-minute walk on the little path. All of a sudden, I look up and see a man walking briskly on the intersecting path, looking right at me. I speed up a bit and try to ignore him, and as we hit the section where the 2 paths intersect, I end up being about a foot away from him. He calls out to me, "Hey, I want to talk to you." I ignore him, and after a few more steps, he reaches out his hand and grabs part of my hair, saying, "Hey, come here." I immediately yank my hair out of his hand and book it to the last block, sprinting to my house, and I can hear him running behind me. I turn the corner sharply and am briefly out of his sight. Luckily, the initial entryway to the patio had been left open by accident, and I run in through the door and slam it shut. I hear his footsteps stop outside, followed by silence, and as I go upstairs and look through our front window, I see him walking away into the construction site. Experience 2. I had a friend that lived a couple blocks from where I was, along the same stretch of beach. After hanging out one day, I decided to head back home around sunset. I've walked this route many times, and it's just barely light outside still. Only a 5-minute walk, so I figure I'll be home before dark. As I cross the intersection from their house, I notice a white van parked on the corner that is not usually there, covering a little garden I like to look at on my way back. I can just barely make out 2 people on the front seat. I think odd, okay, whatever, and pull out my pepper spray. I cross the street passing the van and now have my back to it. As soon as my foot hits the pavement on the other side of the street, I hear the van start up. I turn my head just slightly and see them, illegally turning onto the street where I am now walking. They creep the van beside me slowly, just behind me but within my peripheral vision. I decide to stop and let them pass. I pause and pretend to be looking at my phone and see them stop driving immediately. This was a no from me, and I broke into a full run, the van following me, to a small vintage motel about 1 building away that I know has an open entrance courtyard. And so as I approach it, I turn quickly into the yard and run up to an archway entry for a unit. I stop at the first few steps, catching my breath, and I open my phone front camera to use as a sort of mirror to see what the van is doing. They had backed up onto the entry of the motel and sat there for a few minutes. Then, the one on the passenger side opened the door and started walking towards the motel, his phone flashlight on, and I immediately pulled my own phone back, listening for his footsteps, and readying myself to start banging on the motel door, hoping someone is inside. I wait in the silence for a long time, long enough for it to get dark. I finally look out again, and both the man and the van are gone. I call an Uber to take me the last 2 blocks. Never saw them again. Experience number 3. I have a friend over, and we want to dab. It's a form of smoking weed. It's about 10 p.m. My roommates don't like dabbing in the house because of the smell, so he and I go to his car parked out front. We are in there, having a good time, when I notice a person walking down the block, pulling on car door handles. I notify him, and we watch as the same person comes up to his car and yanks on his back door. He honks his horn, and they back up for a minute. then walk up to his driver window and knock on the window, making a motion to roll it down. Just as I'm about to tell him don't, he rolls down the window a bit. The person is clean and normally clothed and asks what day it is, and then what time it was, to which my friend answers. They then stand there and stare at us as he tries to usher them away, even offering them money. Without saying anything, they walk away down the block, and once they reach the intersection between the construction site and woods, they roll their head back up to the sky and just start screaming at the top of their lungs. As they back away out of sight, I take this opportunity to dart back inside my house as my friend watches, making sure to close the patio door. A few hours later, one of my roommates comes home very drunk, and as we figured later, they failed to make sure the patio door was shut all the way. Morning time comes, and I wake up in an empty apartment. I open my phone and have a singular message from my roommate from 3 hours ago, stating that when they left for work this morning, there was a person that they didn't know sleeping inside the patio area. They thought it was a drunk person who lived in the neighborhood and entered the wrong house by mistake, and evidently did not find it enough of a reason to call me or wake me up. I immediately go to the entry of our apartment, pulling the door open fast. To my surprise, the person who has been talking to us in the car the night before is laying casually across my staircase, fiddling with something. I scream "hey" loudly, and they immediately hop up and run out my patio door. I run down the stairs after them and open the door. They're standing across the street, just smiling at me and giggling. They then give me a little wave and run off. I close the door hard and go back up the steps to see what items they had left. Sitting on the steps was a few coins, some weird wire-type objects. Think a bobby pin after you've bent it into a straight line, a lighter and a pocket knife. Never saw them again. Unrelated to my stories, but shortly after I moved from that area, 1, a teenage girl was abducted from that same corner where I saw the van, and 2, after a car chase, police found a severed head in the freezer of a house along my block as well. I also got a lot of questions regarding calling 911 on my last post, and I wanted to clarify. I'm from a rural area and have had many bad experiences with cops abusing power, and have been raised to always be wary of police. I've also had situations that were severe enough that I did need to call them, and they didn't help me. So that's not really a thought that goes through my head when dealing with these situations. And I've learned how to take care of myself or utilize community resources for other situations. These all happened to me years ago, and it's pretty wild to look back on and remember how terrified I felt in these times. So there's my stories. Hope you all enjoyed. This happened to me yesterday. For some background, I'm 24 years old and 4'11" and a half, and I look younger than what I really am. I've been trying to go out for about an hour walk every day to get out of the house and get some exercise. I live in central Ontario for school between 2 lakes, and there are plenty of trails in this city. I had to go on the other side of town, so I decided to walk down and around the beach, then walk to the bus terminal. At the time, I was on the phone with a good friend of mine. He's planning to come visit me sometime, and we're figuring out what to do in the city. The city I currently live in is a lot smaller than where I grew up, southern Ontario. And while on the phone walking towards the beach, I passed 3 guys on a bench about early to mid-30s and about 5'10". I just so happened to say, well, I live in a small city, and that was enough to rile one of these guys up. Only one guy was yelling at me. Conversation is as follows. Guy. Compared to what? Me. Kitchener. Guy. Oh yeah? How many are in Kitchener? Me. Other has over 100,000 people. There's only about 31,000 people in this city. Guy. Are you Statistics Canada? What? How many Chinese people? I don't know. Why does it matter? You just said terrible stuff about the Chinese. I said nothing about that. All I did was say that this was a small city. No, You are being an effing racist. You think you're so smart, but you're dumb. We are smart. Me. I don't care what you think. Guy. What's the difference between Chinese people and the Viets? Different culture? No, you're effing racist. I didn't say anything about Asians or Chinese, though. Are you recording a podcast right now? Since I was still on the phone. No, I'm talking to someone. I should just record you on video. Even better, I should Facebook Live this and expose you for the racist you are. I didn't say anything bad, though. What's your background? Why does it matter? I bet you don't even effing know how to stop essing on Chinese people. At this point, I knew that nothing that I was going to do would change his mind. Plus, the guy was so aggressive and yelling at me the entire time. I thought he was just going to hit me. My friend on the phone thought so too. I was tempted to call the police, but didn't. And as I was walking the way, the guy continued to shout at me, but I ignored him. I saw them get up and walk in the same direction as me, but I lost them after a bit, thankfully. The whole conversation lasted about 10 minutes. The guys were also as white as I am, but clearly, I'm the racist. Last year in July, I was on vacation in Sicily for 10 days. I was having an awesome time. My hotel was right on the beach, and you could walk through the pool area down to the beach where a portion of it was sectioned off for hotel guests. There were many beach lounge chairs, where you can lay back or adjust the recliner, with little tables and umbrellas that you could use, for a fee, of course. I got a chair and put up my umbrella and decided to read. There was an older couple a few chairs down from me, but no one else was on the chairs that day, though the rest of the beach was packed. I was laying down just relaxing, and I put my book down and closed my eyes. I wasn't worried about theft as I had nothing with me except a towel and my book, and I felt safe. I fell asleep, and I think I was asleep for around an hour and a half. I woke up and was going to get up to go down to the water edge. When I stepped off the chair, I stepped on something and heard a noise. I kind of screamed as it startled me, and it was someone's hand that I stepped on. I saw and felt that it was a hand. All of a sudden, some guy just wriggles out from under my chair and runs down the beach to the left at full speed. I was just so surprised, and I didn't really react other than my scream, because I was a bit woozy and had just woken up. I didn't see his face, but he had a very tan skin and was wearing board shorts and a t-shirt. I don't know how long he was under my chair, and obviously no one told me that there was some dude under my chair. So weird guy, let's not meet. When I was about 6 years old, my family went on vacation to the beach in Florida. I'm a lot younger than my siblings, so while they were doing their own thing with their friends, I was stuck wherever my mom would take me. For the most part, we stayed in this extremely crowded pool area by our hotel, which had direct access to the beach. It's all a bit hazy, but at some point when I was swimming, I looked up where my mom was supposed to be sitting, and she wasn't there. I was really attached to her, so I got out and started looking for her. I scanned all the chairs, took a trip around the bar next to the pool, and I couldn't find her. For some reason, 6-year-old me decided that she'd gone for a walk on the beach without me, so I made my way out there looking for her. I walked about a half a mile down the beach, out of the crowds to a more vacant area, and just remember starting to cry because I thought that I'd never see my mom again. Just as I basically had given up, a woman and man came up to me. They asked me who I was, if I had any family nearby, and I had told them that I was alone and was looking for my mother. They said to me that they had seen my mother, and told me that they would hang out until she came back for me. Well, these people took me about 2 miles away from my motel, We walked down the beach to a more residential area. They kept insisting that my mom was going to be down on the other end of the beach, and that they were going to take care of me. They tried to get me to build sandcastles with them, play in the water with them, and even told me that we could leave to go get dinner and they'd bring me back afterwards. I kept telling them no, and that I wanted to return to my hotel so that I could go up to my room and check for my mother there. And that's when they got really upset with me. The woman said to me, "We're gonna leave. Go get dinner at our house, and we will bring you back to your hotel afterwards, got it?" I was starting to get really nervous, so I told them I didn't want to go with them, and that I could walk back to my hotel on my own. The man then said, and I will never forget this, "You're coming home with us for dinner." He said it in one of those creepy, do it or die kind of tones. I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. Lucky for me, I heard my name in the distance. There was a group of people yelling for me. I bolted over to them and they asked me who I was. When I told them my name, they smiled so big and said, "There are lots of people looking for you." When I turned around to tell the group that a man and woman had been hanging out with me, they were gone. The group, which actually ended up being hotel workers, took me back to my hotel where everyone was waiting. There was a fire truck, an ambulance, and news crews all there because I had gone for over half the day. The entire hotel pool area had been shut down in efforts to arrange search parties. My mother was sobbing and all was okay. When I told the hotel workers what had happened, they were extremely concerned. Apparently, not even a week before, a child went missing in their beach access area. When the kid was found, he claimed a man and a woman lured him out to their car, where they tried to forcibly take him home with them. And that's when he bolted away and found another family for help.